We're in an ante-room in Mar-a-Lago on election night. Marjorie Taylor Greene sitting directly across from me. We are moments from getting another tranche of election results. It looks like Kamala Harris has won the state of Vermont. Is it over?
It's over. Congratulations, Vermont.
She won Vermont.
They are as foolish.
But really
as
just
they
Burlington, if you come right down to it. I mean, there's just no chance she won the Northeast Kingdom. There's no chance she won the pretty parts of Vermont, just the urban slum in Vermont. How do you feel with the limited data we now have about this election?
I feel optimistic, but I'm cautious because, you know, for the past 8 or 9 years, we've watched the left and the media totally destroy Donald Trump's character, defame him, slander him, impeach him twice, try to lock him up, try to bankrupt him, try to kill him. So my thoughts and questions are, why would they let him win?
It's a good question, and what I'm always struck by, we were just spent an hour or two with Trump just a minute ago, I think you were there, is the distance between the Trump that you hear about and the Trump that you actually experience when you're with him. And the first thing that I always notice about Trump, other than the fact he's truly hilarious, he's just so instinctively moderate. I mean, that's like the least radical person I think I know.
Right. Yeah, he's not radical.
At all.
Well, and let's be honest, they actually know him. They know him just as well as we do, Tucker.
Well, that's right.
Everybody's known Donald Trump for years. They partied with him, they hung out with him, they supported him, they praised him, they loved him.
That's
Democrats took his money. They love Donald Trump, you know, and I think maybe it boils down to this. They're really angry and jealous that they don't have Donald Trump. And maybe that's part
true.
of it.
They do have Tim Walz. We'll see if that'll be enough. Trump has won the state of Florida by, looks like, about 1 million votes so far. 30 electoral votes, not surprising. That state seems to be just like a solid Republican state at this point.
Yeah, big red wall. Well, so many people moved there after COVID, rightfully so. The Democrats shut down the country. They made life miserable for people. Suicide rates were the highest at all times. Suicide rates in children were higher than they've ever been, as if any child should ever commit suicide.
Yes.
Such a horrible thought. But yeah, a lot of people definitely moved to Florida to escape all those COVID
Well, then can
lockdowns.
I ask you, I mean, maybe a controversial question, but a lot of people moved to Georgia too, and yet it became more liberal. What is going on with Georgia? Why would Georgia, of all states, a state I always think of as reliably conservative, I've never met a liberal from Georgia.
Yeah.
Why is it even up for grabs at this point? What would happen?
Well, a lot of people moved to Georgia, but people have been, or businesses have been recruited to Georgia. So we have the tech corridor. We have Hollywood because somebody thought that was a good idea to give them tax credits. But we've had a lot, you know, electric vehicle battery plants.
Wait, they brought actors to your state on purpose?
On purpose.
Why would they do that?
Apparently they thought it'd be cool. I don't know. I really liked Georgia back when we didn't have the Hollywood there.
Yeah, a lot of actors in your state, like real people who weren't pretending to be somebody else.
Right.
Oh, so that was a product of like intent. They were lured there.
Yeah, Republicans said that. It sounded like Democrats would be the ones to do something like that.
Not surprised.
Yep.
So right now we have Donald Trump at about 55% in the state of Florida, Kamala Harris at 44%. What do you think is going to happen in your state tonight in Georgia?
Well, they called my race at 7 p.m., literally when the polls closed. And I take that as a good sign.
So you lost? No, you were elected for the third time.
For the third time, yeah.
Last time I checked, it's interesting. I think of you and Trump as very similar in the arc of your public careers. You both came from outside of politics into politics. You were both declared dangerous to the country almost immediately. You were, for a period of like a while, months, the most reviled person in the world. You were a danger to democracy. I'm surprised you didn't get arrested. And then you kind of endured, you stuck it out, you weren't intimidated, you didn't leave. The Republican Party tried to kick you out, you hung in there, and then you became one of the most influential people in the party. It does kind of feel like Donald Trump's story.
Absolutely. Well, I haven't been arrested yet.
No, fair.
And I'm still alive, even though several have tried. But, you know, it's pretty interesting to me, Tucker, and I'm actually enjoying it very much. I get to listen to all these Republicans that denounced me and voted to kick me off committees and talked bad about me and slandered me and distanced themselves from me. I get to listen to them, and they very much sound like Marjorie Taylor Greene. As a matter of fact, they say the same things that I say.
I noticed that. You did. Have any apologized to you?
Quite a few have, actually.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
Quite a few. Not all of them, but quite a few have apologized.
Well, good for them.
Well, when they get yelled at when they go back home by their own constituents and
That's
they
right.
get asked, why can't you be more like Marjorie Taylor Greene? I think they figured it out.
It's just so funny. Here's another similarity between you and Trump. He was, I'll never forget it, attacked on the front page of every newspaper in the country for saying that white supremacists in Charlottesville were good people.
Ridiculous.
He never said that.
No.
You were attacked for using the phrase Jewish space lasers, which you never used.
Said it. No, I
Right.
attacked PG&E, actually, which ironically has been in the news
Yeah.
past couple of days for shutting power
So I
off.
want to go to the betting markets really quick. Who will win the presidential election? Pretty straightforward question. Donald Trump, 66%. Kamala Harris, 34%. With about $282 million on the line so far. I think that's current. That's pretty overwhelming.
I think, and aren't those bettors? They're not rich people, right? These are just average bets. I really don't know enough about the betting market, but I would say most of them are not betting massive sums of money,
Right.
trying to swing the numbers. I think they're legitimately betting that Donald Trump's going to win.
I couldn't, after over 30 years of trying to follow this stuff and getting more confused every cycle, I feel like I know less about politics every cycle. I can't make any sense of the polls, and I don't think I'm being like a superstitious villager when I say I think they're just all manipulated. You're in the business? What do you think of the national polls in this season?
I know I've never been polled, and I know most of my family and friends have never been polled. So my common sense says, how can the polls be correct if everyone I know doesn't participate in them?
Right. Well, that's right. But is there a possibility that polls are used not to measure public opinion, but to shape it? Think that's possible?
100%.
Okay. So we had this outlier poll that got a great deal of attention in Arizona that showed Donald Trump losing Arizona. I don't know a single living person who thinks that's going to happen. But that poll was everywhere, scared the crap out of all these Republicans. Was that the point of the poll, do you think?
Probably. I think Republicans are easily misled.
Yeah, well, yeah.
We're kind of dumb a lot of the times,
Yeah.
actually. I think,
I have been.
well, I mean, it's easy to get scared, but I think the reality is that we've seen mass misinformation, by the media, by Democrats, by Republicans, by consultants, and it is used to sway the opinion of the people, also push their actions, right? And so if they're told over and over and over again, every single day in the news, that Donald Trump is a Nazi, Donald Trump is Hitler, Donald Trump is a fascist, Donald Trump is a dictator,
Right.
Donald Trump is losing, according to all these polls, what that's going to do is it's going to make his supporters less likely to go out and vote for him.
I think it's exactly right. Or embarrass them into not telling others that they're voting for Donald Trump. It does feel like that's changing. I want to ask you about that in 2 seconds, but just for an electoral update, we're at Kamala Harris, 35. Carmela? I
Who
give up.
cares?
Harris. 35 electoral votes so far. Donald Trump, 95, 270 needed to win. You think we'll know tonight?
I feel like we've been campaigning for years now. I would love to know tonight, but I have been shocked so many times over the past couple of years, I've quit predicting.
So Barack Obama, who I think, if you're to lay responsibility for the destruction of America at any one person, I think it would be Barack Obama, the most deceptive president in our history and most anti-American. He just tweeted, we may not know for a long time, days, and that's normal. In what sense is it normal? India, the biggest democracy in the world, gets its votes counted by sundown. Why can't we do that?
Right. Well, we should be able to do that, and everyone knows it, and they know it too. They're just liars. And the reason why he's saying we may not know for days is because they plan on stealing the election. I know we're not supposed to say that.
Why not?
Well, I'm an election denier, so I fall in that camp. But honestly, they don't.
You're an elected official, and so you have the right to comment on elections and say whatever you think about elections.
Absolutely.
You were elected.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
If you can't give your opinion on elections, then who can?
That's a fair point.
Yeah, I think it is.
I-
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Can I give my opinion on voting machines
Yes,
as
ma'am,
well? We
please.
should not be using them. They're very faulty. They're
course
a
not.
horrible product. I talked to people in my district that voted on these voting machines and that switched their votes. But because our country is so disgusting and attacks people that come out and tell the truth and try to be whistleblowers about what's happening, these people are scared to go on record and say what they experienced.
As someone who spent like 12 hours in depositions from voting machine companies, not even named in the suits, no, I'm very aware of their efforts to intimidate the rest of us into silence. So let me read Barack Hussein Obama, as Trump says, quote, from his tweet. It took several days to count every ballot in 2020, and it's very likely we won't know the outcome tonight either. So please keep a few things in mind as you make your voice heard today. He speaks only in cliches. 1, thousands of election workers around this country are working hard today. Respect them. Thank them. Oh, shut up, you pompous douche. 2, don't share things before checking your sources. Really? You liar? You lecturing me about accuracy? Stop. Sorry, my hostility is getting in the way. 3, let the process run its course. It takes time to count every ballot. 27.6 million views on Elon Musk's X. So let me ask you, we have electronic voting machines because they are sold to us as faster and more accurate. Leaving aside whether they're more accurate or not, there's a lot of evidence they're not accurate at all. And they don't leave a reliable record. I think that's a fair criticism. They're not faster.
No.
Countries with hand-counted paper ballots get their results in faster than we do. So what could possibly be the point of spending money on a technology that's slower and less accurate? I don't understand. Like, what's the upside?
Well, they get a contract and they make a lot of money. That's one thing.
Okay.
But actually, I think there's multiple layers there.
Yeah.
The government is great at handing out contracts to their friends, right? Friends and family.
I've noticed.
So you have to remember that these companies make a lot of money off of providing their product to be used in our elections. I think that's wrong. I think our elections belong to the American people, and the American people largely and overwhelmingly on both sides of the aisle don't like the voting machines. I mean, if I say I don't like Starbucks coffee and I don't want to drink Starbucks coffee anymore, Starbucks is not going to sue me about it, right? They can't sue me for saying that. But yet, for some reason, these voting machine companies, when you say, I don't like the voting machines, I don't want to use them, I think they're bad, I think they can steal elections, all of a sudden we all get threatened that we're going to be sued.
Right. Some left-wing oligarch will pay the voting machine company to haul you into court. They stole my text messages and gave them to the New York Times. I was not even named in the suit. So,
which is a complete violation of your right to privacy.
Well, they're very sinister. I would say Dominion's a very sinister company. And
well, they make a lot of money. So if they lose their contracts, they're out. But here is something, talking about Barack Obama's tweet, there was a message in there that I read when you were reading it and I was looking at it. I think something to take away from his tweet to me is he was saying, number one, be nice to the election workers. He's telling people, do not harass them, do not push back. We have election workers pushing out Republican poll watchers today. I'm sorry. We're not going to be respectful.
But it's also an inversion of the way things are supposed to work. It's like they work for us. They should be nice to us.
That's right.
I mean, I think you should be polite to everyone. That's including Barack Obama, by the way. He was here. I would be polite to him. I'm polite to everybody. I try.
But the second one was about censorship.
But the onus is on the people who work for us to be nice to us, since they're our employees whose salaries we pay.
Exactly.
So shut up, Barack Obama, once again.
And then the second one was check your sources before you share information.
Okay.
Back to the whole lecturing of
well, he's a liar, so I'm not going to take accuracy advice from him. Okay, so we have more information. This is from Glenn Greenwald, one of our favorite journalists, one of the few good journalists left. Trump is up 11 points in the heavily Latino Miami-Dade County with 80% of the votes counted. Biden won it by 7 points in 2020. Hillary won it by 30 points in 2016. Well, that's crazy. So
that's wild.
With 80% of the votes in, Trump is 55 to Kamala Harris is 44%. That is wild.
That's amazing. For a man that's talking about securing the border, and this is a heavily Latino county.
Hillary won it by 30 points in 2016, and now Trump is up 11. I mean, so my math isn't great, but that's a swing of 41 points in 8 years.
Wonder how many Puerto Ricans live in Miami-Dade.
I don't know. That's a great question. This is, to me, the long-term, the most significant number to come out of tonight, which is what percentage of the Hispanic vote did Trump win?
It's huge.
Right.
Yes, this is huge.
So, for some reason, this is not discussed much in public. But for a guy who's very famous for being a Klansman or a racist or a Nazi, he seems to be doing pretty well among Hispanic voters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Let me ask you one last question.
Okay.
If Trump wins tonight, he's on track to win. What'll the message be? How will you feel? Has there ever been a greater vindication?
not yet. Not yet. I think winning tonight will be the beginning. To me, it'll be a celebration, but actually it means a lot more because it's time to get to work. And that's when the hard work really begins.
Oh, yeah.
If he wins tonight, the most dangerous time in our history will start. We have thought the most dangerous time had been the past 4 years or so. That's not true. If President Trump goes back in the White House, it truly will be, in my opinion, something we've never experienced.
In what sense? Why?
They cannot let him win. They can't let him achieve what he has promised to the country. They can't let Republicans support him to achieve the agenda that he's promised to the country because it destroys everything that the entire world, the globalists, the elites, climate change, that goes away. If America stops supporting the climate change lie, China stops supporting the climate change lie. All the other dominoes fall and that one goes away. That's been one of their biggest false gods that they've worshiped for a long time. Going even further, what have they been trying to do for, 20 years or more, even longer? They've been supporting migration, look at Europe. Totally invaded Europe.
Destroyed.
America, they're trying to destroy us. That will stop. And if we really secure the border and shut it down like we're planning to do, that's going to change everything. That ruins their whole migration plan. So if President Trump goes into office on January 20th of 2025, I honestly don't know what they're going to do to stop him, and I can't fathom it, but I think it's going to get worse.
You have a keen appreciation for the ruthlessness of the other side, having been its victim. So that's something to take seriously.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, if Trump wins, pretty great.
It's going to be awesome. I swear it's going to be great. I'm going to go find some fake news person and just punch him straight in the nose.
Another Trump supporter calling for violence.
Yeah, I don't mind a little bit of violence like that.
Marjorie, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful to see you, Congressman. Thank you. And congrats on winning.
Thank you.
Ah! Thank you. All right, so we are bringing up next a friend of mine, someone who, without getting into too much detail, was one of the rare members of the first Trump administration who, in my estimation, stayed true to the vision of the candidate from the first day to the last. Not everybody in the first Trump administration did that. There were some mercenaries involved. There were some people of low character. Trump himself has said this. But there were some people of high character and clear vision. And at the very top of that list would be our guest, Cliff Sims, who sits across from me now, who's will be involved in the president's transition efforts if he wins. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
It's so great. So what do you think we're looking at, to the extent we know?
The truth is, we don't know.
No, we don't.
I mean,
we don't know. Don't
there's
admit that. You're breaking the fourth wall, Cliff.
Well, we just have to be honest with the people here. Tucker, right? Come on.
You're
Fake
right.
news is some other part of the complex. This is
I've
the real.
sat on so many sets on election night and kind of bullshit on it. Well, it looks like Macomb County reporting, whatever. You don't know.
You really are. It's funny, you know, as a political operative,
Yeah.
you get all these texts throughout the day saying, what are you hearing? Well, I'm not hearing freaking anything.
I
I'm
know.
like hearing what you're. I mean, and it's like the same. I think about the same thing in the White House when you work there. You realize how often you experience events through the television, even though you're sitting in the building. You know, so it's really the same thing. I mean, I don't pay any attention to the polls. I don't pay any attention.
You really don't?
But I really don't. But I do think that there is something to this betting markets stuff because there's like real money. People are like laying down money.
Since you brought it up, Kalshi, am I pronouncing that correctly? Okay. We're looking at it right now on the screen. Donald Trump, 65%.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris, 35%, dropping like a stone. He's ascending like a rocket. That's meaningful, you're saying?
Well, maybe. I mean, the one thing I'll say about it is these are not yet mature markets.
Yeah.
And so we're at a point where if somebody gets a wild hair and it's like, I'm going to drop $1 million down on this right now, they can swing it quickly. But I just think there's always something to be said when like people are willing to put their money behind something and say like, I believe it's going to happen. I'm going to actually put some skin in the game.
$284 million of skin in the game.
That's right. That's right. So I think there could be something to that. I mean, we are seeing a little bit of data starting to trickle in here and there, and I will say it looks favorable. But we're still at a point now where it's really hard to say what's going to happen.
Why do you ignore the polls?
Well, I mean, how many times do they have to be wrong before you're just like, I don't even read them anymore?
No,
I mean, I've one of the things that I took away from the time that I spent with you in Maine was when you were in Maine, it's not that you're completely cut off from the world, but you are very selective about your consumption of information.
Yes, I would say.
And I have found that there's an inverse relationship between the amount that I pay attention to the news and my personal happiness.
Yes,
and
the accrued wisdom. Actually,
that's right. That's right. So this is something you and I have talked about. I mean, there are reasons that wisdom that has stood the test of time. There's a reason it has stood the test of time. There's not a lot of what happens on cable news that ever stands the test of time.
No.
And so there's probably something to that we should probably eliminate some of that. So I feel the same way about polls. I mean, my gosh, they were wrong in 2016. They were wrong in 2020. I think they're wrong now.
What do you think it feels like to work in cable news for 25 years and realize that nothing you've said on TV matters at all, or will be remembered by anybody, or affected anything in any meaningful way?
It's got to be a miserable existence. I mean, look, Tucker, you know these people better than anybody. There's a reason.
No, I'm talking about myself.
Well, no, not you. There is a reason why these are the most miserable people on earth. They are. I've known a lot of them personally now,
I do too.
And they are miserable, sad, depressed people who have a very difficult time finding any meaning in what they're doing. And so instead, they chase. There's almost a drug addict element to it, where they're chasing the next little dopamine hit. So like, oh, well, I got a mini scoop. What is that? I don't even know what a mini scoop is. A scooplet? What is a scoop? Oh, I posted, and this is like the people that do like Politico Playbook and these.
They're the most unhappy people.
They are miserable
ever.
People. Miserable
I could name the number of happy ones on one hand. I lived next to Andrea Mitchell for years, unhappiest person. Dana Bash, I work with her, unhappiest person. It's like, you just go down the list, like, who's happy? I don't know.
They're also the least self-reflective people I've ever met in my life, and that would actually do them some good to like have a little bit of self-reflection about this, because that's where you find meaning and happiness by like reflecting on the things that you are doing and have done and trying to extrapolate meaning from them. Like, what should I think about this? And there are a couple that I will say is very interesting, and you and I know them, I won't say their names, who are wrestling with that right now and have been like in an existential crisis that they're like, why does nothing I'm doing matters?
That's right.
And the people I work with are miserable. And I look at the people who are 10, 20, 30 years ahead of me in this career track, and they're all miserable. And maybe this isn't what I should do with my life. I don't know. I mean, there's something to be said for you and what you've done.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I just need to interrupt.
Do it.
I'm shocked and thrilled. Florida voters reject ballot measure legalizing recreational marijuana use. I did not. So the pro-drug people spent more money in Florida on this, I think, more than any ballot measure in the history of Florida. They were everywhere. And in general, voters tend to sign off on legalizing weed. Why do you think they rejected this?
I do think that there is this... there are these patterns in public life. There are backlashes to certain. The pendulum swings.
Yes, that's right.
And it always swings like a pendulum. It swings hard and it swings hard, and then there's some stasis in the middle. And I think we've experienced too much of a swing too fast, dramatically to the left on this issue and many other issues.
That's right.
And you're about to see a serious backlash to that.
I'd like to see us go full Singapore on the question. I mean, it's really destroying the country. And I smoked weed every day of my childhood, so I was always for marijuana. But watching what it's doing to young boys right now, I feel like people need to go to prison right away. I mean, it's really destroying them. Like, actually, ask them, by the way, if you're around 18-year-old boy, college freshman, how many people do you know who've been wrecked by dab pens? And they'll tell you. And people are getting rich from it, and they're criminals as far as I'm concerned. So, well, that's crazy. Did you expect that?
I haven't been tracking it.
Sorry, this is something I'm just fixated on as an anti-drug person, but I really think the Saudis get it right. on drug policy. I really do.
Well,
Sorry.
Trump has talked a lot about death penalty for drug kingpins and that kind of thing. So I think he's on the same page
Yeah,
too
I
on
mean,
some of this
it's
stuff here.
okay. So Trump wins Florida by double digits. Again, probably not shocking, but if you take 3 steps back, pretty big change from a few years ago.
Yeah, and the thing that also I think about there is you're seeing people vote with their feet, so they're leaving places like California. They're leaving these, and the concern has been these people are going to leave California, move to Texas and Florida, and they're going to vote like they still live in California.
Right.
And this is suggesting that people are not just leaving the places the left has decimated, that they are leaving the left. That's the way I read that.
Well, it feels like there, to use an overused phrase, there has been a big vibe shift.
There has.
I notice it everywhere I go, just from the number of people who scream at me at airports, which is like down to almost zero. It's almost no screaming at airports now, which is kind of crazy. I was at Logan Airport this morning early, waiting to be screamed at. Not one screamer.
That's a little disappointing. Come on.
I'm kind of. I'd steeled myself for screaming. I'd had 2 Dunkin' Donuts large coffees because I was ready. Nope. Just a nice nurse came up and thanked me for my service. I said, I work in television, not really service, but thank you. But I do feel like Elon getting involved is a big factor.
Well, there's no doubt. One thing that I have noticed in the last, I mean, I haven't been doing this a long time. I really, 2016 election cycle was the first time I was involved in at the presidential level, even remotely close to that. And the thing that I have noticed, and it's specific to Trump, but it's also, I think, even broader than Trump, is the stigma that was attached to Trump personally,
yes,
and that was attached to being a conservative,
yes,
is entirely gone. And in fact, being a conservative is now a full-on countercultural movement because the left is, if you want to be a rebel now, you're a conservative.
Oh yeah.
If you want to be a part of the establishment and you want things to stay the same and you want to be one of these elite, whatever, then you're a leftist. If you're on a college campus right now, which used to be like the bastion of the left, is a college campus, and granted, still in our elite universities, some of them are. If you go to most college campuses around the country right now, they are voting for Donald Trump.
Oh, for sure.
They've got the red MAGA hat on. Boys and girls alike, it is completely shifted, and Elon, I think, is a huge part of that because he exists in a similar way to Trump outside of politics in the cultural zeitgeist in a way that politicians couldn't even imagine.
No.
And when a guy like that says, "This is screwed up," and I'm for the guy that they're trying to kill.
Yes.
I think that's moved votes in a really meaningful way. I even see it in my pickup basketball games. In my hometown in Birmingham, Alabama, people used to think I was kind of a novelty that he worked for Trump. Like, what's up? What's that all about? And now I walk in. They have ordered the Trump shoes and would like for me to get DJT to sign them for them. And this has all happened in the last couple of years.
I believe
it's a huge vibe shift.
I believe that. A lot of black guys in your game.
A lot of black guys in my game.
So that is a real shift.
Real thing.
And I never really believe Republicans are always talking, we're going to win the black vote. No, you're not. But I have just in my life, just every black guy I know is like not against Trump, kind of.
Yeah, no, totally.
That is real.
100%. Well, it's now, you don't want to be stereotypical about people, but if you look out across a mass of people and you think you can't have I wonder if that person votes for this person or that person or whatever. Now, if you see a middle-aged, unattractive white woman, they probably voted for
100%
the Democrat.
100%.
And if you see a young black male who has been a historic constituency of the Democrat Party, that's a Republican
captive
now. That's a Republican now.
I totally agree.
And working class voters, same thing. If you saw a working class white voter in a trailer park, historically, they would say the Republicans are the party of Wall Street and they don't care about me, and they probably voted for Democrats. That's our base now. That's where I grew up. That's in working class white America, where J.D. Vance grew up. J.D. Vance is a picture of the shift in the Republican Party. He's like an avatar for the shift that is happening in real time right before us. Those people are Republicans now, and I think it is a huge. It's a great thing for our party. It is a great thing for our party.
Of course, I couldn't agree more. I'm thrilled by it, and I think Trump has forced the party to pay attention to its own voters in a way that Mitch McConnell was never going to do. One downside is, though, that the money is with the Democrats. 75% of the nation's wealth is held by Biden voters. They're the overclass. Republicans are the underdog. Just a fact. Kamala Harris, one of your finance guys, told me today, spent 3 times what the Trump campaign. It was 3 to 1. All in, independent expenditures included. If Trump beats that, like, what's the lesson? You're outspent 3 to 1 and you win? Like, don't we have to rethink? I mean, that just seems like the biggest story ever told in politics.
There's so many things about Trump that if you try to think about someone not him doing them, it is hard to imagine because it's a larger than life personality. That were he not that, he would not have been able to break the machine the way that he has. But I think because he has broken the machine, it has shown a new way. It has shown a new path, a different way of doing things where you don't have to play by the same rules. And you know, for better or worse, this is a communications game, right? And he's a communications master. Anybody who's going to try to replicate what he has done and beat that system is going to have to be an incredible communicator.
That's for sure.
But they're going to have to be able to be willing to do it in a way that is not what is. So, like, let's think about the difference between Mitt Romney and Donald Trump. There are obviously a zillion of them. But one of them, just practically speaking, as a campaigner, one of them tried desperately to do no harm. I want to make no mistakes today. Whatever I do, oh my gosh, I just don't want to make any mistakes. The other said, I might make 10 mistakes today, but I'm going to say what I actually think. I'm going to say what I actually believe. And I'm going to bet that there are enough people out there that are going to say, I like the authenticity, that it's actually okay if I disagreed with 2 of the 10 things that he said because I knew he actually meant it, as opposed to the politician who tried to do no harm and it was a total fraud. That's the ultimate takeaway from Trump: is authenticity is the currency now.
So last question, and you're the person to answer it since you worked in government at a high level in some of the more complicated parts of government, I think it's fair to say.
Probably.
Trump gets elected tonight, let's say, inaugurated January 20th. How does Washington respond? How do the agencies respond? I mean, every signal they've sent that I've picked up is, we won't allow this. We will not tolerate this. We can't have this. The body will reject the transplant, period. So, like, what happens?
It's hard to imagine it not being that way. Certainly in the parts of the government that you're talking about, right? I think it's going to be a very...
I'm talking about the meaningful parts, you know, the more secretive, the more significant parts, not the Ag Department.
Right.
DOJ, CIA, et cetera.
Yeah. I think it's going to ultimately come down to, when Donald Trump wins tonight, which I fully believe that he will, the people that he chooses to go in and represent his interest and the country's interest in those places are going to have the biggest stones of anybody who's ever walked into those places before,
like crazy,
and not be captured by the building, whatever the building may be. Because I saw this even the last time. Like, a lot of people go in there with the best of intentions, and then you realize how easy it is to just be like, you know what, I got the title now, and I'm a big shot, and it's actually just better if, like, if I walk out of here the day that I leave and it's the same as the day I came, that's not the worst.
Or their constituency
can't do that
I mean, my dad worked in government. I saw this even as a child. The agency head's constituency becomes the employees of the agency.
That's exactly right.
Rather than the voters, than the country.
Yeah.
And they're loyal. Like, we don't want to besmirch the reputation of whatever stupid agency he's running, right? FBI, CIA.
Yeah.
Like, how do you find people who are ballsy enough to go against that very, very natural trend?
I think the good news is we now have a little bit of a track record. In 2016, we didn't know what certain people are going to do. Now you see who's been through the fire. You see what people are going to do. The other thing I think that we have learned is often making a change that is, let's call it a 75% change, produces the same backlash as trying to do a 10% change.
That's exactly.
And so why are we going to be incremental about some of these things?
Right.
They're going to come for our throats no matter what on this stuff. Well, at least we could do is, like, make it a meaningful change and make it worth it. And I think that's the mindset that we got to have if we get the opportunity.
I mean this. You know that I mean this. The fact that you're involved in this effort makes me feel a lot better about its chances of success.
Well, thank you.
I mean that. So thank you. Cliff Sims.
It's great to be here.
Great to see you. Thank you. So one of the big things I think that's different about this run, Trump's third run for national office, is that he's not doing it alone. There is an army of people around him. Of course, there in some sense always has been. There have been a lot of disaffected voters who felt they're not being represented by their leaders who clustered around Donald Trump. But there weren't a lot of really, to be blunt, successful people from, say, business around Donald Trump. Almost all of them are too vested in the current system to join him publicly. And that has just changed in a huge way, most famously with Elon Musk. But I would say right behind him is his friend who got there first, David Sachs, who joins me now. David, thank you very much.
Hey, good to be here, Tucker.
For coming on. So you have been a pretty, and I should say David Sachs is like a huge figure in tech world on the West Coast, San Francisco, South Bay, and you've been a pretty consistent voice for conservatism, well, since you were at Stanford, I think. But you have, I think you were the first person at your level in your world to come out and say, I'm voting for Donald Trump, and here's why. First of all, why did you do that? And what was the experience like? What was the reaction that you got?
Well, I guess, one of the things that I did starting a few years ago was I started doing this podcast, the All In podcast.
Yeah.
We started doing it pretty much at the beginning of COVID. I guess this was in early 2020. Just me and a few friends from the tech world, fellow investors. And so we started doing this weekly pod. And when you do a podcast like that, you just kind of have to say what you think. Otherwise, you got nothing to talk about.
I never understood. First of all, I want to say I didn't get its significance until I went on it. And then every person I'd ever met watched it. I just didn't understand the reach of it. But if you want to reach successful people, you do the All In podcast, I learned. But why did you do that? You've already got a lot going on. Why did you start that podcast?
We just sort of did it for fun. There wasn't really a huge plan behind it. It was just, we were all kind of locked in our houses at the beginning of COVID. It was really extreme in California.
Yeah.
We couldn't do anything. And so we just decided to do this podcast. So it kind of happened organically. A couple of my friends, we all played poker together. And the original idea was it'd be kind of fun if we were just to have cameras recording us playing poker. That wasn't practical, but we just started, recording our conversations over Zoom and putting them out. And the thing kind of caught fire and became a little bit of a sensation.
Well, it certainly did. And a sensation in a very specific way. Like you were speaking to an audience that was not reached by Trump, basically.
Yeah.
And I sense a lot of your audience had heard of Trump. They knew they were supposed to hate Trump.
Yeah.
But they're kind of absorbed in their business. I mean, that's my sense.
Right.
of it.
Yeah. No,
And
it's first and foremost, it's a podcast about business,
Right.
markets, technology, and politics. But really, it's about whatever the big issues are that week.
But
And
you're
so it's,
probably the first person your audience respects they'd ever heard endorse Trump. I guess that's what I'm saying.
I think, I was a gateway drug for a lot of people.
Wait, can I just interrupt you
yeah.
really quick? So we're just looking at these Virginia numbers. Virginia is basically a Democratic state, thanks to the federal government, thanks to Northern Virginia, which is a wasteland, I should say, with a Republican governor. And yet Trump is tied as of right now with 41% in Virginia. He's down by 0.1 of a percentage point, but he's basically tied with Harris. This is kind of amazing.
Yeah, I think Virginia was a +10 state for Biden. Wasn't
Yeah,
it?
right. Was it actually +10?
I think it was +10. And then, I remember that number because when Youngkin won the state, it was such a big, upset that he could overcome, what had been a 10-point deficit. So, yeah, look, if Trump is running even-ish in Virginia, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's 41%.
So who knows?
And I don't know where they're from. I mean, that's one of those states where, its components have nothing in common with each other. Southern Virginia has nothing in common with Central Virginia, or certainly Northern Virginia, nothing in common with Southwest Virginia, et cetera. You can see what a weirdly shaped state it is. So you come out for Trump, and you just basically say, I'm for Trump. And you say that to a bunch of people who, I suspect, think they hate Trump. What's the response?
Well, I think that it hasn't been as negative as it was, I think, in 2016 or 2020. I think that, in fairness, there were a couple other folks who were trailblazers going back to 2016. I mean, Peter Thiel, in particular,
Yes, for sure.
really was kind of far out there when
He
he endorsed.
spoke at the RNC in 16.
Yeah, that was a big deal, and I think he took a lot of slings and arrows for that. I think by the time that I did it, I probably was one of the first people this cycle to do it. but a lot of people ended up kind of following, and ended up, at one point I tweeted a list of kind of major figures in the tech industry who had endorsed Trump, and it was like 20, 25 people. So there was a lot of people who came on board, and then obviously Elon coming on board was a huge deal, and he's gone all out.
Deal,
yeah.
is it not?
Yeah, I think, look, I think that one of the reasons why so many people have come on board is because the last 4 years have just been so bad. It's just been so egregious. I mean, Biden and the Democrats came into office promising a return to normalcy. This is what they called it. What did we actually get? They opened the borders. I mean, just totally inexcusable. There's no justification for that. They gave us trillions of reckless spending. And they wanted more. Remember, Build Back Better was originally supposed to be something like 6 trillion, then it was 4.5 trillion. Eventually they got it, I think 750 billion plus all the other trillions, the Inflation Reduction Act and all the rest. So we had that massive inflation. We had the lawfare and the censorship, I think, alienated a lot of people in our world. Because it's just so fundamentally un-American to prosecute your political opponents. I think this is the thing that kind of made me want to kind of go all in. Well, I mean, yeah, I was conservative before and I would have supported Trump or whoever the Republican candidate would have been, but it made me want to do so much more to see that Trump was getting prosecuted. They were trying to put him in prison. They're trying to bankrupt him. They're going after his kids. I mean, it was just beyond.
Calling him a rapist when he didn't rape anybody.
It's just beyond the pale. And then, they started going down the line. It wasn't just Trump. You can see what they're doing with Elon. They're prosecuting his companies now, or the government's got all sorts of investigations into his companies, mainly because he restored Twitter X to being a free speech platform. So political retaliation is just now part of their playbook. And if you let them get away with it, if they win this election, they're going to keep going with that. The only way they stop is if they lose, and then they have to reconsider whether these tactics are alienating people. But if they get away with it, they're like, okay, this seems to be working. Let's just keep doing more of this.
And they have the temperament of animals. Like they don't believe in sportsmanship or fair play. And so once they start winning, they get blood on the tongue, and it makes them more vicious. I have noticed that.
Yeah, I mean, it is vicious.
So last question. I know you think about this a lot since you're in the tech world, but social media, if Trump wins, it'll be because of social media, new media.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. Doing Rogan's endorsement is more significant than any other endorsement other than Elon's, I would say. Can they allow social media to stay open in the way that they are, particularly X, to stay open?
Well, it is a giant loophole in their control of the legacy media.
Yes.
And it's such a big loophole that it kind of threatens that whole superstructure that has been created or has been revealed. I think one of the things that's been most interesting about the last, let's call it 8 years, has been that, initially when Trump first won, it was because of issues. It was kind of, you could call it the old Pat Buchanan issues. It was the border, it was trade, it was the forever wars, and Trump sort of pulled that sword out of the stone and used it to slay the Bush family dynasty and then the Clinton family dynasty. And if Washington had just taken the note, if they just said, okay, we need to make an adjustment here in our policies, then the whole country would have been different. But that's not how they reacted. They said, we have to stop this no matter what, even though what did Trump really wanted to do? He just wanted a wall, and he wanted to pull our troops out of wars we were losing anyway. But that was just totally unacceptable to them. And they reacted with lawfare, with hoaxes, the Russiagate hoax, the scandemic. And it was a collaboration of not just the Democratic Party. It was the Democrats and the whole legacy media running, the Russiagate hoax, and the administrative state and the security state. So, what I think happened is that the opposition to Trump revealed itself to be something much greater than just, a candidate. It's kind of like, you talked about in one of your speeches how this was like the hero's journey. I mean, Act 1 was sort of him, winning the presidency. Act 2 was The Empire Strikes Back, and it revealed something about our government, that our government is not just it's not just Trump versus Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. No. It's about this larger. They're really just a avatar for this larger superstructure, this marriage of sort of the of government, the permanent government, the administrative state, the legacy media, the Democratic Party, and then all of their various affiliates, whether it's the